Hi there, I'm Andy Stevenson. Now, many of us love getting lost in a good audiobook, but most people have no idea what it's really like to be that voice in their ears. So if you're someone who likes listening to audiobooks, or you're an author thinking of having an audiobook version of your work produced, or even if you're an aspiring or new audiobook narrator, stick with me through this video as I'm going to reveal what a typical day in my life as a narrator is like. And towards the end of the video, I'll reveal what I found to be the most surprising and completely unexpected aspect of the job. So yes, I'm a professional audiobook narrator, so that means my job is to be an actor, a linguist, a vocal athlete, and a storyteller, all from inside this tiny little padded cell. Now, when I tell people what I do, most picture me cozied up with a good book, perhaps sitting in front of the fire, just reading it out loud. But the truth is far less comfy and far more technical, and frankly, a whole lot more unglamorous. It involves many hours of solitary confinement and a physical routine to keep me stretched and vocally coherent. My day doesn't just start with a script. It starts with this, my body. It's my instrument, and before I even think about a character, I have to make sure the equipment is functional. And that means hydration, hydration, hydration. I'm aiming for at least 8 glasses of water a day because you can't moisturize vocal cords directly, only through the water in your system. I also have to avoid coffee, which I know is very sad, but caffeine is dehydrating and can irritate your vocal cords, so it has to go. But tea is fine. Even better if it is decaffeinated or fruit or herbal. It all counts towards those 8 glasses. Once I'm properly hydrated, the physical preparation begins. You wouldn't run a marathon without stretching first. And trust me, narrating audiobooks can sometimes feel a bit like a marathon. I start by stretching my face and neck and shoulders to release any tension. A tight jaw means a tight sound. Then it's all about breathing. Good velvety narration is powered by the diaphragm breathing deep into your belly. It's what gives you the control to handle those incredibly long, complex sentences that authors love to write, without taking a noisy, gargling gasp in the middle. And I find that 1 or 2 minutes of deep breathing really removes any tension in the body, as well as the voice. So it really does make a difference. Now, I know that a lot of narrators then do a variety of weird sounding exercises which could make someone walking by think that they're passing either a zoo or an asylum. Others run through tongue twisters like red leather, yellow leather, and the pleasant pheasant plucker. Be careful with that one, to sharpen their diction. And some do sirens, sliding their voices from the lowest note to its highest and back down to gently stretch their vocal cords. It all sounds ridiculous, but the idea is to build vocal clarity, flexibility, and endurance. But what I do is to simply read the first page or a couple of paragraphs from my manuscript out loud without the mic switched on. I don't need to act out the voices or the characters when doing this. I don't want to work too hard as I'm only warming up. So I just read, and it gets my voice working naturally, gets me in the narration mindset and helps me back into the story from the day before. So by all means, make lots of peculiar noises and vocal mayhem if you want to, but I find that this approach works well for me and saves time by doing something that is directly related to the work you are about to embark upon for the day. And whilst doing it, I take a couple of sips of my room temperature water. So, with my voice ready to go, it's time to start reading in my workspace, which, as you can see, is a tiny soundproof room, which happens to be in the corner of a much bigger room. This little padded cell is where I'll spend the next 4 to 5 hours. Now, this used to be a loo, or a John for our American friends, so I call it my Ludio, haha. I removed all the loo-related fittings, of course, and applied soundproofing and sound deadening, as you can see. And it works perfectly. Check out my other video on equipment and creating your recording space. I've put a link to it in the notes below to this video. But before I start any narrating, I will of course have read the whole book to myself in my head. This read isn't a read for pleasure, although it hopefully will be a pleasurable experience. I'm a detective hunting for clues. What's the author's style? What's the tone? And most importantly, who on earth are all those characters? It's vital preparation, as I discussed in another video, which is the first of a 6-video series on how to produce the perfect audiobook. Again, I've provided a link in the notes below to this video. So this preparation means that there should be no surprises as you narrate each chapter, and it is one of the main things that separates professional narration from simply reading out aloud. Whilst doing that pre-read, I created a dossier on a spreadsheet. It's all described in the video I've just mentioned, so do check it out. And remember, consistency is everything. A listener might not notice if a character's voice isn't perfect, but they will definitely notice if it changes halfway through the book. By making a note of when in the book a character first appears and utters some words, it will be easy to check back when that character reappears maybe several chapters later. Then there's the research. If the story mentions a tiny village in Lithuania, I have to look up how to pronounce it correctly. Or if a character is a nuclear physicist, I need to understand the jargon he or she utters so I can say it with authority. Not like I'm just reading a string of alien words. Getting a pronunciation wrong can instantly pull a listener out of the story. I mark the manuscript where there is a word that is unfamiliar so that I can quickly remind myself of its pronunciation through Google or preferably YouTube when I get to it. So, all this prep is the invisible 50 to 60% of the job. It can take days, even a week or two, but it's the work that makes a performance feel more effortless. Without it, I'm just a voice reading words, not a storyteller bringing a story to life. Okay, so all that prep is done. If it's a new book, which of course I have read in its entirety, I get my script for the first chapter only, and I step here into my Ludio. I only do one chapter, or maybe 2 or 3 if they are very short ones, at a time. I close the door and the world goes eerily silent. It's time to get narrating. Recording is often an act of intense, sustained concentration. My microphone is so sensitive it can pick up my clothes rustling or my stomach rumbling, so I have to be still, focused and completely in the moment. I sit on a padded stool when I record, so I'm not restricted in my movement and posture for comfort. So, as I said earlier, to exercise my voice, I read out a few sentences, maybe paragraphs, on the first page out aloud, and I don't put a lot of effort into the voices or the acting at this stage because the purpose is just to loosen up. But once I've done that, I can start to record. This is from a book that I am genuinely soon to start. It's called The Midnight Gift, Book 3 of the horror fantasy Amelina Dalka series, written by C.L. Holmes, and it's going to be a cracker. I narrated the first 2 in the series, and it was a wonderful experience getting into the amazing characters that C.L. Holmes has created. I've referenced the first 2 books in the notes of this video below. So, here goes. Prologue. Old and Ancient Friends. The ancient castle was so old and worn, it appeared to have fused with its towering perch, as if in some inanimate... Now, every 20 minutes or so, I stand up and stretch. Sometimes I might go out of the Ludio and just walk around for a minute or so. Eventually, 3 to 4 hours of recording is probably the limit. At the end of each chapter, I play it back to check word-for-word accuracy, and sometimes I pick up a misread or something that I don't like, such as a voice click, a tummy rumble, or I realise that I haven't intoned a phrase correctly, so I correct it whilst I'm here in front of the microphone. Once I'm happy with the recording, I save it onto a little memory stick and I take it back to my office where I will do the editing. Okay, so I'm now in my office and ready to edit the recording using my desktop PC. It's easier to do it here than in the Ludio on my laptop, and it's a welcome change of environment. If you completed a recording that is 1 hour long and it took you 3 to 4 hours to record, play it back to review and do some corrections all whilst you're by your microphone, the editing process is going to take you around 3 hours of work at the PC. Here you'll be closing gaps where you pause, removing extraneous noises like clothes rustling and maybe some distant outside sounds like traffic or, often in my case, noisy sheep. Adding sound effects such as dropping or raising the pitch of a particular character's voice, maybe adding the telephone voice effect if a character receives a phone call, and so on. And there's also the mastering, which is adding effects to the overall recording to make sure that it sounds professional and technically pure, and very importantly, meets the submission requirements of the audiobook platform that you will be submitting it to, for example, Audible. Now, check out other videos on my channel. I've listed some below. There are my 6-step videos, which will take you through the whole preparation, recording, editing and mastering processes in some detail, but there are others too of relevance, so fill your boots. When you've finished editing, the final file is saved, of course, and I send it off to the author, or sometimes it might be a publisher or an agent working for the author, so that they can listen to my day's work and provide hopefully quick feedback, which again hopefully doesn't demand too many changes. If it does require some, then I will apply those changes usually before I narrate and record the next chapter, but it depends on how quickly the author gets the feedback back to me. Now, earlier I promised that I would reveal what I have found to be the most surprising and unexpected aspect of the job, and it is this. When you spend hours engrossed in a story and living certain characters, your body doesn't always know that you're just acting. You're tapping into your own emotional state, which enables you to create an authentic performance. I've got into the stories far more deeply than when I have just read them in my head at the outset for preparation, and at times I have felt a distinct lump in my throat during emotional or particularly dramatic scenes. So now I know how screen and stage actors find it relatively easy to cry at the appropriate moments. It's because their heads get embedded into the character they're playing, and it's the same when I'm narrating. Although, of course, an audiobook narrator plays not just one character, but tens or scores even of different characters. It's a strange occupational hazard. To do this job well, you have to be emotionally reactive and malleable, but you also have to learn how to put the story away at the end of the day. For me, that means afterwards doing something completely unrelated to reading words. Maybe I'll cook the evening meal or go out for a walk or do a workout. It's important to get out of that narrating mindset and give your emotions a rest. So, To conclude, as you can see, being an audiobook narrator is so much more than just reading a book into a microphone. It's a craft that demands vocal discipline, detective work, intense focus, and a willingness to live inside a story with your whole heart. It is often a solitary, grueling, and emotionally draining job. But to be the first person to give a story its voice, to build that bridge between an author's words and a listener's imagination, that really is a privilege. And when the author is amazed and captivated when they hear how you have brought their story to life, well, that really is the icing on the cake. So, thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful and interesting, and if you did, please press that thumbs up like button and do subscribe to my channel because it's free, of course, and you will get notified when I release more videos on all things audiobook related. So, do see me again soon, and bye for now.